Chapter 11, The Hot Springs Nexus, Whitewater, Mena, and the New Guard. The 1980s and early 1990s witnessed the Iron Grip's evolution into a post-Cold War hybrid, a political criminal network that used high-level financial fraud and policy to achieve its exploit and profit mandate. This era focuses on William Clinton as governor of Arkansas and the events that unfolded in his state, a microcosm of the national corruption overseen by the Reagan administration. Arkansas, the Mena Paradox, and the governor's blind spot. Arkansas, the state governed by William Clinton, became a primary node for the Iron Grip's operations. The two most significant criminal activities running simultaneously in the state were: Number 1, the Mena operation. Just down the road from Clinton's hometown of Hot Springs, historically a protected mob enclave, the largest known drug smuggling operation in U.S. history was running with complete impunity at the Mena, Arkansas airfield. As detailed in Chapter 10, Barry Seal, under federal protection, used Mena to import an estimated $5 billion, a figure closer to $100 billion today, worth of cocaine. This massive, sustained operation, running for nearly a decade, required the total dereliction of duty from every level of law enforcement. The governor's responsibility. As the chief law enforcement officer of the state, Governor William Clinton was responsible for the Arkansas State Police, who were ultimately tasked with interdicting drug trafficking. The sheer scale and duration of the Mena operation make it highly unlikely that the governor was entirely unaware of the activities, raising serious questions about the nature of the immunity shield operating at the state executive level. Number 2, the Savings and Loan Crisis, S&L. While Reagan oversaw the explosion of drug supply, he simultaneously presided over deregulation that enabled the savings and loan crisis, which functioned as a vast, high-level bank robbery. This scheme involved buying a bank, using fraudulent loans to buy assets like land, and letting the bank fail, leaving taxpayers to pay the bailout, a perfect example of exploit and profit being executed via financial policy. The Whitewater Microcosm. The Whitewater real estate deal involving William and Hillary Clinton was a microcosm of the larger S&L crisis. The deal collapsed, leading to serious charges of financial fraud. The legal fallout resulted in the imprisonment of Clinton's business partner, James McDougal, and his lieutenant governor, Jim Guy Tucker. Despite the intense scrutiny and the conviction of their closest associates, William and Hillary Clinton emerged politically unscathed, later entering the White House. This ability to navigate political and criminal disaster suggests a powerful, protected status that went beyond simple legal defense. The final silence. Vince Foster and the files. The true cost of this protection became evident shortly after the Clintons reached the highest office. Vince Foster, a lifelong friend of the Clintons and their Deputy White House Counsel, was suddenly found dead in July 1993, officially ruled a suicide under extremely suspicious circumstances. The events that followed echoed the Obfuscate and Obstruct playbook. The theft. Immediately after Foster's death, individuals connected to the Clinton team were caught in Foster's office stealing and removing files, a clear act of evidence tampering that bore remarkable similarities to the Watergate break-in. The suppression. Hillary Clinton reportedly exercised control over the subsequent investigation into Foster's death, dictating what investigators could and could not touch. Torn notes were later found, which lacked Foster's fingerprints, but reportedly bore the prints of those in the Clinton team who were handling the evidence. This suggested a deliberate cleanup operation to contain the political fallout, particularly regarding the Whitewater files. The New Guard, Jeffrey Epstein, and the Nexus of Power. The political compromises of the 1990s set the stage for the next hyper-elite evolution of the network. This period saw the emergence of figures like Jeffrey Epstein, who utilized his immense wealth and connections to access and control the powerful. White House access. Epstein first entered the national political scene, visiting the White House 17 times in a single year under the Clinton administration, gaining unparalleled access to the highest levels of government. The global network. William Clinton would later fly on Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express, at least 26 times on extended trips around the globe. The antagonist compromise. Crucially, Clinton's main antagonist during the Whitewater and subsequent scandals was independent counsel Ken Starr, who was never able to secure a conviction after years of investigations and millions in costs. Years later, emails would surface showing a relationship between Starr and Epstein that appeared intensely close, suggesting Starr himself was part of the same elite, compromised network. Starr's own public statements, such as his excitement over a J&J lawsuit where he knew people on both sides and could work both sides for maximum exploit of the billion-dollar deal, is a verbal manifestation of the Iron Grip's core philosophy. Political and legal systems are assets to be leveraged for maximum criminal profit. The successful navigation of the Mena, SNL, and Whitewater crises, coupled with the systemic silencing operations and the entry of figures like Epstein, confirmed that the Iron Grip had evolved. The network now possessed massive assets, not only in the Republican executive, Reagan, but also in the Democratic executive, Clinton, ensuring its compromise and control was bipartisan and absolute. The NAFTA windfall and the Mexican gateway. The Clinton era, marked by high-level political compromise and financial scandal at home, was simultaneously defined by a sweeping piece of international legislation that inadvertently provided the Iron Grip with its most sophisticated logistical framework yet, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, signed in 1994. NAFTA did not create the Mexican drug trade, but it created the economic and infrastructural windfall that allowed Mexican drug trafficking organizations, DTOs, to evolve from simple subcontractors into dominant, vertically integrated transnational criminal organizations, cementing Mexico's role as the primary gateway for illicit drugs into the United States. From transporter to wholesaler. Prior to NAFTA, Mexican DTOs primarily served as transporters for cocaine originating from the dominant Colombian cartels, Medellin and Cali. While Mexican groups focused on indigenous production like marijuana and black tar heroin, the high-volume cocaine shipments largely entered the U.S. via Caribbean, air, and maritime routes. The Mexican system of corruption, often characterized by a centralized plata o plomo, silver or lead, accommodation with the ruling political party, maintained a degree of territorial order in exchange for large bribes. The infrastructural compromise. NAFTA's core function, the massive deregulation of legal cross-border commerce, was the unintended gift to the Iron Grip's Mexican partners. The cargo surge. The agreement triggered a massive surge in cargo trucks crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, while border inspection rates simultaneously declined. This explosive flow of legitimate commercial goods provided an ideal high-volume cover for DTOs. Reduced risk, increased profit. The massive, deregulated trade dramatically lowered the transaction cost and the risk associated with smuggling. This logistic goldmine allowed the profit margin for smuggling a kilogram of cocaine into the U.S. to increase by as much as 75%. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Mexican DTOs controlled up to 90% of the cocaine entering the U.S., evolving from mere transporters to the dominant wholesalers. The human cost, fracture, and the rapacity effect. NAFTA's economic effects on Mexico also fed the criminal machine. Increased competition from U.S. agricultural imports severely displaced vast numbers of Mexican maize farmers. This displacement created a large, disenfranchised pool of unemployed rural and working-class young men who were highly vulnerable to recruitment by the cartels as foot soldiers and smugglers. The combination of skyrocketing profits and a ready supply of labor triggered intense, violent competition among DTOs, a phenomenon known as the rapacity effect. Pre-NAFTA cartels fragmented into the hyper-violent organizations we recognize today. The sheer high value of controlling the trafficking routes, plazas, incentivized the DTOs to abandon the old plata, bribes model, and instead rely on plomo, bullets and violence to secure their territory, leading to a disproportionate rise in homicides and the eventual destabilization of the entire nation. In effect, an act of major U.S. economic policy created the perfect operational environment for the Iron Grip's partners, securing the infrastructure and the labor necessary for the next generation of global exploit and profit on the doorstep of the American consumer.